my friends. I want to highlight and thank the LSD members for welcoming us into their traditional territories, and thank them for being present today and continuing to make sure that your voices are heard. This is extremely important. We have an awful lot of work together, all of us, to build a stronger country that respects and is open to all people's success, and your voices are extremely important in that. I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. I want to thank my friends Brian Gallant, the Nova Scotian, New Brunswick Liberal leader. He's doing a wonderful job. He's got a tough fight coming up, but a good one. We know he's going to do just fine. He's shown his mettle already. I want to thank the House Leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, who's not in the House today, Dominic LeBlanc, who's out here showing me around. I told him there's no way I'm coming to Brunswick without him, so we got him out of the House today because he's been such a good friend. And Regina Armstrong, of course, who's been tremendously supportive as one of my lead organizers here. I also want to take a moment to thank someone for their support who unfortunately wasn't able to be with us today. My friend Andy Scott, as you probably know, is going through some health challenges right now and had to be in St. John for some treatments. So we were hoping to see him here today, but as long as we send him all our best thoughts and prayers, that would be So mostly, like I said, I'm incredibly pleased to see all of you out here today. Pleased and humbled, because it's been absolutely extraordinary. Over the past months, as I've gone out across the country, the response from Canadians from coast to coast to coast has really been overwhelming. And in places where you wouldn't traditionally see a lot of support from the Liberal Party, people are coming out because, yes, we get told all the time how cynical we are about politics and how much politics are a source of negativity in this country. But at the same time, Canadians across the country are united in the fact that we're tired of being cynical about politics. We don't want to be stuck continually voting against the left or against the right. We don't want to have to accept the least worst of the options out there. We want to build a stronger country altogether. And for too long, politics has not been about that. It's been about playing for the lowest common denominators, finding the wedge issues that can divide a community against itself, finding a way to play West against East, English against French, urban against rural, in clever ways to just get ahead enough. Just get enough votes to get elected. And the dirty little secret about politics like that is that they work. The politics of negativity, of division, sound bites and spin are very effective. They are, in fact, what gave Mr. Harper his majority.
That's right.
But what they also show, what his majority has also demonstrated, is once you've gotten elected, leader of a country as broad, as diverse as Canada, by dividing people, you actually can't do a very good job of governing. Because you are so wrapped up in narrow electoralism that you no longer can see or engage with the big picture. And that's why Canadians who are just as confident and ambitious and open-minded and hopeful as we've always been are looking for other ways to make a difference. We are more engaged as a people in our communities, in local projects and foundations, in big issues and causes, whether it's the environment or human rights or issues around the world. Canadians have always understood that we are incredibly lucky to live in this country, but that with that luck comes a responsibility to do right by it. And this polarization of politics that has turned us away from it driving us towards being more engaged elsewhere, and that's a good thing. But we need to reconnect with politics as well. Because this cynicism, this polarization, this negativity, well, it doesn't become us. Nous sommes le pays dans le monde qui a compris comment être fort, pas en dépit de nos différences, mais bien à cause de ces différences. De bâtir sur nos valeurs communes, nos perspectives partagées, pour savoir qu'ensemble, nous sommes plus forts que désunis. The reality is, we are that one place in the world that has figured out how to be strong, not in spite of our differences, but because of them. And that's what we have to build on once again. We need politics to be focused much more on how we draw together as communities and as a country to address and solve the big challenges we're facing, rather than pander and diminish our sense of togetherness, our sense of citizenship. Because it is about citizenship. Being a citizen is more than just voting and paying your taxes and obeying the law. Being a citizen is about understanding that each and every one of us has a role and a responsibility to be a part of the community that we live in, to be active in shaping the world that we grow, to know that our actions, our voice, our engagement shapes the world around us in very tangible ways. And the fact that we've come to expect so little of our politicians, so little of politics from Ottawa, is actually as much of a reflection on us as it is on the people who represent us. We need to turn around the disengagement. But if we're going to do that, we need politicians to be demonstrating that they're worthy of our trust and respect once again. You know, when I was in my first year of high school in Montreal, I had a Jesuit teacher who explained to me the way respect worked in his classroom. If we as students offered him respect, then he would begin to give it to us. It wasn't until years later, when I became a school teacher myself, that I understood that, you know, the Jesuits were right about an awful lot, but not this particular aspect. That it was up to a teacher to model respect of their students, and then expect the students to learn and give respect back. So much of what I am, my identity as a politician flows from my identity as a teacher. And I know that if we want Canadians to trust politicians again, politicians have to first and foremost demonstrate that we trust Canadians. That we're willing to share with you the challenges we're facing. Not try and bamboozle you with propaganda and, you know, catchy sound bites and ads during the Oscar ceremony. Every time I see those economic action plans, I found myself on Sunday night watching those economic action plan ads and saying, oh boy, when is that Seth MacFarlane coming back on? You know, when you've got a bad host that you want to get back to because the ads are so bad. We need a government that's willing to say, no, not just a band-aid on the problem, but actual long-term solutions. And it doesn't matter if we're just going to hold for the next election cycle. We have to build for next generations. Canadians are smart, confident, open-minded, value-based, educated people who know that we're in a challenging world and who are just waiting to be part of generating the solutions. Instead, we're being talked down to. The people we represent the people we choose to represent us in Ottawa, the people we elect right here, to send to be our voices for our concerns, for our hopes and dreams, to speak for us, to vote for us in the House of Commons, but they're no longer representatives for their communities. They've become spokespeople for the Prime Minister here in our ridings. Fredericton deserves better than that. And right across the country, we deserve better than that. If I was in small towns in rural Alberta where hundreds of people, much like this room, were coming out to talk politics with me, to listen, to hope to be part of something different, it wasn't because the Trudeau name is so darn popular in rural Alberta. It was because they're tired of being taken for granted. They're sick of the transformation that has happened, where you had the Reform Party that was created in the late 80s out of a desire to make politicians accountable to the grassroots, make politics more transparent, more engaged, more responsible, more open, more respectful of citizens. That's what created the Reform Party. And people out west haven't changed. They're still very much like that, like Canadians across the country. It's just the party they elected has changed. And Mr. Harper has now become the most top-down, controlling, non-transparent, no wonder people were coming out looking for an option and an alternative. No wonder Canadians across the country are beginning to feel like, wow, we can do better than this. We need to do better than this. But the fact that we're getting through, the fact that we've been able to be divided as much from one coast to the other, urban against rural, French against English, the fact that the politics of division are getting traction these days in a way they never have, doesn't come down to just how clever Mr. Harper is and how deep his pockets are. It comes down to me to something that has actually changed in Canada. Something that is almost a breaking of the promise of this country. The very premise of this country was that anyone who came here, or their descendants, wherever they settled, whatever background they were from, could work hard, and be there for their neighbors, and succeed. Because we all have the same experience in this country. We all have the same experience in this country. It's a country that's too big, too empty, too dang cold too many months of the year for any of us to think of going it alone. Yes, we need to work hard to succeed. Yes, we need to be there for each other as well. And that has always defined us. And that has actually led to the success that we've been able to generate as a country. Every successive generation has been able to work hard and create opportunities for themselves and mostly for their children greater than they were given by their parents. And that forward progress, that upward mobility is always what has defined this country. And that's actually the fact that there's success for everyone made us able to go beyond surface, linguistic, or religious differences between people. That's what has actually made Canada function so well. So why now are we being divided? It's perhaps because, for the first time ever, there is a generalized sense right across the country that it's no longer true that the next generation will have greater opportunities than we do. And it's not going to be an automatic improvement in quality of life from one generation to the next. And two things about that. First of all, it's deeply unsettling. And second of all, it doesn't have to be that way. Because everywhere I go across this country, people have the sense that, Canada's doing pretty well. And it keeps coming back. Anytime you ask the finance minister or the prime minister about our economy, he'll say, well, we're doing much better than Spain. We are the envy of countries around the world. Our banking system, our stability is just wonderful. And Canadians get that. They sense that Canada's doing pretty well. But the question that families and individuals have for me right across the country is, if Canada's doing so well, why are we struggling? Why is it getting just a little bit harder, seemingly, every week? Why aren't we feeling that we're doing well like the country is doing well? Well, actually, the numbers back that up. Over the past 30 years, the Canadian economy has more than doubled in size. We've grown more than 100%. But in that same time frame, median family income in this country, average middle class income, have increased by only 13%. So while costs are rising, as they always do, revenue is stalled, and therefore personal and household debt is exploding. And people begin to get the sense that Canada's doing well, but Canada's somehow not taking care of me. Or Canada's not allowing me to share in what prosperity I'm working hard to create. And that's why we're turning inward. We're trying to focus on our survival or our neighborhood survival or some of those big issues, because we do not feel that politics can actually help. That politicians are actually concerned with us. That's why we're unplugged. That's what we need to turn around. That's why I'm so excited about this Liberal leadership. Because we've done a couple of things differently that I think set us on exactly the right path. First of all, we're making every single riding in the country matter as much as every other riding, regardless of how many Liberals are in the riding. Because if we're going to be a truly national party, once again, we cannot just focus on where the Liberal Party has strength. Because there's not many places left. Let's be honest about things. This party, over the past dozen years, has been in a straight slide. I mean, we went from 172 seats in 2000 election to 135 in the election after that, to 100 in the election after that, to 75 in the election after that, to 34 in the last election. And that's a straight line, and it ends up at 2 seats. Neither riding or Dominic are losing, but we need to do that again. We need to reconnect, and that means being connected and relevant right across the country. But it also means demonstrating that we're willing to trust Canadians. Now, the most important decision a political party can make is who gets to be the leader of that political party, particularly in this day and age where the leader takes so much space in the media and the way people vote. So instead of making Liberals choose who the next leader will be that will present to Canadians, we're turning that around. We're actually trusting Canadians to pick who will be the next leader for us Liberals. So when you sign up on the way in, and if you haven't, you can sign up on the way out, you're signing up for free. Nobody asks to see your shiny red card. Nobody asks whether you paid any membership dues, because it's for free. Nobody asks you any skill testing questions about how many years you've been a Liberal. No. We want to trust Canadians who could theoretically, perhaps in the future sometime, maybe think about possibly voting for the Liberal Party. That's good enough for us. We want you to get involved, to make a positive choice. To say, you want to be part of politics once again. You're tired of being disengaged and made cynical, and you think your vote matters and your voice matters. And we in the Liberal Party think your vote and your voice matters too, which is why we're giving it to you. We need to once again demonstrate that politics is about bringing people together. That politics is about generating solutions. That politics is about do not set one community against another. That understands that if we're going to create a prosperous country that is fair, that is responsible, not just right now, but to future generations as well, we have to make sure that there is equality of opportunity, that there is a path to success, that no one gets marginalized or left behind. I mean, if you look at the 20th century, what was the big challenge of the 20th century? It was around rights. It was around recognizing the fundamental, inalienable rights of every single individual. Whether it was women's right to vote in the early 20th century, whether it was the fight against intolerance and fascism and Nazism in the 40s, whether it was the push against the Cold War and communism, whether it was the fight for civil rights in the United States, the accomplishment of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and even through the end of the century, the recognition of same-sex marriage rights. It has been a constant struggle to recognize that every single individual has basic, inalienable rights that no one can take away. But we have to ask ourselves, what's the next challenge? What's the challenge of the 21st century? Oh, we still have work to do around rights, but we're getting pretty far along. For me, from what I've seen working in community centers, representing an extremely challenged variety, understanding the concerns of our friends in the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities across this country, the challenge is now that we recognize that everyone has inalienable rights, we have to start recognizing the fundamental, inalienable value of every single human being. That everyone has something to offer. Everyone can nobody deserves to be ignored. Everyone matters. There will always be people more successful than others. But fundamentally, we define ourselves as human beings, as a social animal, by how we are perceived, how we are valued or deemed important by the people who are important to us. What is our relevance to our tribe, however we define that tribe? That's the measure of success. That's why you can have rich, famous people on the covers of magazines and the supermarket checkout stands who have all the money and all the fame in the world, but who deeply and fundamentally seem perfectly miserable. Why? Because they don't have any importance or value to the world from which they've grown so much. They're irrelevant. Well, that quest for relevance is what has to be at the center of the 21st century. And we have to make sure that everyone attains the possibility of being relevant within their community, within their neighborhood, within their world. And that happens first and foremost by the basic respect that politicians and our leadership needs to offer citizens. Respect around sharing the tough decisions, respect around openness towards how we generate the very candidates that will run for the members of Parliament, has to do fundamentally with us as citizens beginning to expect more and demand more. Demand more from our representatives and our leaders, demand more from our neighbors and our communities, but mostly we have to start expecting and demanding more from ourselves. We are better than those guys in Ottawa make us see. Yeah. We can do better. We must do better. That's what I feel like we will do. Let's do it. Thank you very much.
Are we excited yet? This leadership campaign is important. It's about more to come. We all know justice support reaches far and wide. It reunites party faithful, bridges those from across party